Today we're going to be unboxing the Firebird Delta Ray from Hobbyzone. Now this is a Delta Wing aircraft and it's pretty unique. It's a beginner trainer aircraft, which is kind of unusual to have a Delta Wing aircraft as your beginner trainer aircraft, but it's equipped with SAFE. And this is the ready-to-fly version, so it comes with the DX4E, which is actually a pretty good radio. It is also available in bind and fly, so in case you own any other Spectrum radios, you can always buy the bind and fly version. However, if you're starting out, we really recommend that you get the ready-to-fly version because the DX4E is a really good radio and the whole package is very good value. Now we're going to take the Delta Ray out of its absolutely gigantic box. We're going to set it up, turn it on, test it to make sure everything's working so that you guys can follow along at home in case you end up buying one of these. Okay, so the Delta Ray is now out of its outer packaging and let's see what's inside the box. You have the aircraft itself in the center and it's restrained with this foam piece. We'll open that up soon. Now you have the battery in here, which is a 1300 milliamp hour E-flite battery. Next you have a balance charger. Now this is a balance car charger, so you can only plug it into your car to charge your battery. We really do recommend getting a regular E-flite balance charger, and I'll put a link to one of those in the description below. Up here you have the DX4E radio, 4 batteries which appear to be AA batteries. You have the wing, which surprisingly was just lying pretty loose in the box. Now I'm sure it was taped down and the tape came off. It looks undamaged, it looks fine so far, and we'll put this together. You also have the package with the wingtips in it, and you'll have to attach these wingtips. I'll show you how to do it in a moment. Next you have the manual. Now these manuals are really helpful. They have a lot of useful information. These guys spend quite a bit of time writing these manuals. They're not cheaply written, rather poorly written manuals like the ones you get with, say, RC Toys from China. These are very detailed manuals, so please make sure to read them before you put your aircraft together. You have 2 bags. One with the parts for the landing gear and one with parts that you need to finish the assembly of the aircraft. And last but not least, you have a set of decals so that you can give your aircraft a specific and unique number. Very nice little touch. And what we'll do now is we'll take the aircraft itself out of the box and we'll start setting it up. Now the first step in the setup process is a little counterintuitive. You want to make sure you test all the flight controls before you start assembling the aircraft. This way, if there is something wrong with the aircraft, you haven't assembled the whole thing and don't have to take it apart to return the aircraft to the manufacturer. So let's test the flight controls, and in order to do this, the first step is to install the landing gear. You can obviously take off the landing gear if you don't want to use it when you go flying the first time. For this process, to test the flight controls, it's really advisable to attach the landing gear, and this helps to elevate the aircraft and makes it much easier to test the controls. So let's go ahead and do that. There's 3 separate landing gear pieces on this aircraft. There's 2 in the back and 1 up front. Now we're going to install the ones in the back first. The ones in the back just push into place like that, and then insert the retainer plastic pieces into each of the slots. And I'm going to put the second retainer piece in the second slot. Now something to pay attention to is the fact that there are 2 types of screws provided. The shorter screw is for the rear landing gear and the longer screw is for the front landing gear. Now you're going to insert 2 screws per retainer and tighten them up with a micro screwdriver. Next we're going to work on the one in the front. Insert the landing gear into the slot, then insert the retaining clip, the plastic retaining clip, and then insert the retaining screws. Now you will need a slightly larger screwdriver to tighten down the front landing gear. Now you can actually go ahead and put the aircraft on a flat table so the belly is not touching the ground and the props are off the ground. Now as you've probably noticed, this aircraft doesn't have separate ailerons and elevators. It actually has an elevon, which is a combination of the elevator and the aileron in one unit. We're going to test this unit out. Now first we're going to do the basic initialization test. In order to do that, make sure your throttle trim is all the way down. Make sure all your other trims are centered. So make sure all these trims are perfectly centered and that this throttle trim is all the way down. Now with it that way and the throttle at position 0, flip the switch, which is the mode switch, flip it to the beginner mode, which is mode 0. So we're going to leave it in mode 0, turn the transmitter on, it beeps, and then there's that green light that indicates that it has sufficient battery charge. Now we're going to put this aside for a second, and to do this you're going to flip the aircraft over, open up the hatch which is on the bottom of the aircraft, and you're going to insert the flight battery inside its hatch. And what you're going to do next is connect the two wires, and as soon as you do this, make sure to flip the aircraft over and put it on level surface. And as you could see there, the controls actually went through a initialization process rather rapidly. Now in order to do this, we're going to use only the right controls. Now this is a mode 2 transmitter, so the controls on your right are actually your ailerons and your elevator. So let's test the controls. Aileron left, aileron right, elevator back, elevator forward, and the controls seem to be working pretty well on this aircraft. Make sure your controls are working. If there is an issue with the direction of your controls or with your controls working in the first place, do not fly the aircraft. As tempting as it is, do not fly the aircraft, return it to the manufacturer, get a replacement or get a refund. But do not fly the aircraft. Horizon Hobby will not cover any damage to the aircraft once it started flying. So be very careful, make sure to test your controls before you actually start flying it. And refer to the manual for the direction of the controls. Just also make sure that the direction of the controls is accurate. So as I said, test your controls before you move on to the next step. Now the next step is to test the motor operation on the aircraft, and in order to do that we're going to be using the left stick. We're going to flip it back into the beginner mode. And when you do this, you have to make sure that the aircraft is restrained, otherwise it will fly away. So in this case, what I've done is I've placed it on a flat table and it's facing a wall. So it practically has nowhere to go. So even if you do pulse the motors gently, the aircraft will not move anywhere. Now, the other alternative is to hold the aircraft from the back so it doesn't move. You don't want the aircraft moving at all when you do this test. So with one hand, I'm going to hold the aircraft, and with the other hand, I'm going to pulse the motors gently. Now you want to do it gently, very little throttle input. You really don't want too much throttle input at all. You just want to make sure that the motors are spinning, which is always a good sign. So let's do that and test this out. Okay, so as I explained, I'm holding the aircraft and I'm holding it from the bottom of the tail, and I'm holding it firmly so the aircraft doesn't move at all. It has absolutely nowhere to go. And in this case, it's even facing a wall. So even if it does go, it's going to go into the wall gently. And make sure to pulse your throttle. You don't want too much throttle, just a very light amount of throttle. So let's give it a bit of throttle and test the motors. And there you go. The motors are spinning, and I'm going to give it a gentle bit of throttle, and I'm going to give it a bit of left rudder and a bit of right rudder to test the differential thrust. And they all seem to be working. Time to move on to the next phase. Now, before we proceed to assembling the rest of the craft, I'm going to take the flight battery out of the craft for safety purposes. Now, the next thing we're going to assemble is the tail fin of the aircraft. Now, in order to assemble this, you need the tail fin itself and the custom cut double-sided tape. Now, start off by peeling the double-sided tape and then accurately lining it up on the tail fin. Be careful to line it up exactly as it's supposed to be lined up. And here you go. It's stuck to the tail fin. And then peel the backing off the other side of the double-sided tape. And now what we're going to do is insert the tail fin into the slot and press it down into the slot till the double-sided tape seats itself correctly, and you'll feel it. You'll feel it seat itself correctly and firmly onto the tail. Next, we're going to install the wing fins. And what the wing fins do is that they slide in and then sit in a groove. So make sure that they sit properly in a groove, and there's grooves on the bottom and on the top. And you want to do this on both sides. And what you're going to do once it's seated properly in its groove is use these strips of clear tape. And we're going to apply the clear tape to this edge here. And what this does is it'll keep the wing fin inside the groove, and it'll keep it from coming out. And you want to do that for the top and for the bottom of each wing fin. And last but not least, we're going to install the wing tips. And what we're going to do is peel the double-sided tape and then stick it onto the inside flange of the wingtip and make sure it has stuck on properly, and then peel off the second backing of the tape and then attach the wingtip to the bottom of the wing and make sure it aligns properly to the edge of the wing. So you want to press down so that the double-sided tape can actually stick and that it sticks really well. And as you can tell, it has adhered well in this case. And you want to repeat this process for both wingtips. Now, to give the wingtips a bit of extra support, use the small pieces of clear tape along the edge and give this a little bit of extra support. So put the little pieces of clear tape here on the edge to make sure that the wing gets a bit of extra support. And that brings us to the end of our unboxing and setup of the Hobbyzone Delta Ray. If you found this video useful, please hit like and subscribe for more unboxings, reviews, and how-to videos. Now, if you're looking to buy this aircraft, I've put the link to this craft in the description below, so feel free to check that out. And thank you very much for watching.